right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, and friends and family, and everyone on the internet. Welcome to the show. Well, actually, it's the pre-show. This is the part of the show where we just kind of get warmed up. We let everyone just come on in, so don't be shy. You know, come on in. It's really helpful for me. If you can just let me know in the chat if you are out there. Say hello. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking about robotics. We've got Jan Markson, who's an incredible mentalist, who's going to be talking about persuasion and influence. So that's really exciting. And it's interactive. So if you're watching this now, and even if you watch this after the fact, this will still be live, this little interactive bit. All you got to do is scan the QR code, open your phone camera, point it at the QR code. A little thing will pop up, and that'll take you to a question. And the question is, what would you love to automate in your day-to-day life using robotics? So anything. If you could automate any chore or task, what would it be? Let me know. Scan the QR code. And yeah, if you're just joining in, the show's going to start in just a couple minutes. Well, let's see, a minute and 40 seconds. So we're going to take you on a journey, just like this track, with the synths and the breakdowns. It's going to be awesome. And also, if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe, ding the bell. If you're on LinkedIn, there's a little bell you can ding to keep up with all the news. Same on YouTube. So yeah, hope everybody's doing well today. It's feeling like spring. Oh, voice is a little bit low. Thanks, Carrie. You know, it's probably, it's the pre-show. It's okay. And thank you for telling me, Carrie. And good afternoon from Florida, Robert. What up? Hope you're doing well, my friend. Let me know, Carrie, if the audio is sounding better compared to the music. I was just blasting the music, having fun there. Turn it down a bit. Is that good? Let me know. And thanks for joining, everybody. We are about 30 seconds away from the show, and it's going to be good. Did you scan the QR code? Let's see if we got any answers coming in. Let me know what you would like to automate. What day-to-day tasks would you love to automate with the help of robotics? All right, we are getting close. Are you ready? 10 seconds to go. Sound is good. Thanks, Robert. 3, 2, 1, let's get the show started. Hey, it's helpful when you unmute yourself after the main stinger. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that one more time. You know, I'm doing the show by myself, guys. Come on, you gotta give me a break here. All right, I'm live. I'm doing this by myself. So I pushed the mute button, so now you should be able to hear me. So welcome to the show. I am your host, Arthur K. We've got a great show lined up for you today. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for tuning in. And if you scroll down, you can see previous episodes. Last week, we took a deep dive into AI, where I showcase some really interesting, fun, useful AI tools. So you may want to check that out, but don't go anywhere. You can do that. You can do that later. Stay with me here. This show, if you haven't watched it before, it's, kind of a fun, interactive, casual show where we're going to talk about, current events, particularly as it relates to the events industry and entertainment. So, if you didn't catch the last episode, we dug into AI. I showed a bunch of AI tools that I use or think are cool and that may be useful to you. So you may want to check that out. And then coming up in the future episodes, we have an amazing artist by the name of Maya Kiltron who's going to be here next week, and we also have a cannabis event supplier for the events industry, a cannabis supplier for the events industry, who's going to talk to us about cannabis at events. And I have a lot of questions, and there's a lot to unpack there, so I'm excited for that. And today we have the incredible Jan Markson, who is a mentalist. He is a speaker, and he is going to talk to us about persuasion and influence. And I'm really excited to learn about that, because we could all use we can all upskill our persuasion and influence skills, because those are useful in day-to-day life and family life and business. So I'm excited to learn about that. And if you're just joining too, we are going to be talking about some robotic stuff today, because, there's been a lot of developments in that field along with AI. So I would like to know, what is a day-to-day task that you would love to automate using a robot? I can think of a bunch, but I want to see if you guys are on the same page as me. So open your camera, your phone camera, scan the QR code. And if you're a QR code challenged, I didn't mean to do that. If you're QR code challenged, you can go to stagecast.io and enter the code. Where is it? Let me find it for you. Enter the code 6359, stagecast.io, and enter the code 6359, and let me know what day-to-day task, and we'll take a look at that after. What day-to-day task would you like to automate with a robot? And also today, I want to acknowledge, let me get rid of this QR code. I want to acknowledge that a few days ago was the 3-year anniversary of when the COVID-19 pandemic started. And what a ride it has been. I'm curious, where were you when the pandemic hit? I feel like, for most people, that's probably like something that's just going to be etched in your memory forever. For me, I was in Las Vegas with You Request Live, and we were on stage doing a huge showcase for like 4,000 event planners at the special event conference. And, as we were on stage, like the phone calls were coming in, the cancellations were coming in, and it was just a really surreal kind of thing to experience. So put in the chat, you don't have to scan QR code, and just put in the chat, where were you and what were you doing when you found out about the global pandemic? Curious to see what everybody's thoughts were on that. Okay, so now we're going to get into our very first segment of the day, and it is Special Report. So we're going to start the Special Report today with, I feel like we need some feel good. There's a lot of news that I'm going to share today, that is affecting the events industry, and some pretty big things happening. So before we go into that, some of it's not the best news. Who knows? It there may be some ripples. We'll get into that. But the first one I wanted to talk about was a feel-good moment. If anybody was watching the Oscars, for me, this was just an awesome moment. Ke Huy Quan won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I still need to rewatch that because it was so mind-bending. I don't even know what that movie is about. I gotta watch that again. But I had no idea. I absolutely had no idea watching the movie that guy, Ke Huy Quan, was Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and also in the Goonies. So what an awesome moment, and a reminder that, it's never too late to do things, right? Apparently he had taken an almost 40-year hiatus from making movies. He hadn't even seen Harrison Ford, since they were promoting that movie. So just a really good feel-good moment. And we're gonna move on now to the less exciting or happy moments. So let's talk about here. We're gonna go here. Silicon Valley Bank. I'm sure people have heard about this news. A fairly large, I think 20th largest bank in America, failed. And, the result was a lot of panic. It seems as though the U.S. government, through the FDIC, has stepped in and is going to honor all the deposits that were there. However, any investors in the bank are SOL, which is sad, but when you invest, you take risks. And, one of the kind of nasty things about this whole thing that I just that doesn't sit well with me is that days before this whole thing went down, the managers and executives paid themselves these gigantic bonuses. And weeks before, they were selling off, millions of dollars worth of shares, so that they probably knew something was going to go down. And this bank is a bank that invests heavily in startups. And, when you think startup, you don't necessarily think a company like Etsy, for example, but they have millions of dollars in that bank. Excuse me. And then recently I saw an event industry publication. The owner of that publication, put out an email or a LinkedIn post saying that they had just put a deposit. This is after the failure. They put a deposit of $250,000 into the bank, and shared a letter that the new CEO, was sharing with all their customers, saying, please, we're FDIC is covering all deposits, and in order to keep things moving, please keep depositing money into the bank. So it seems like people will be covered, people who had deposits in there, but who knows how long that might take. I saw Joe Biden saying something that they're going to have availability right away, but there could be ripple effects to this in the events industry. I mean, even just thinking of Etsy and how many event planners and wedding planners use Etsy. And I heard rumblings of, Etsy, what are they called? Artists or artisans not being able to fulfill orders because they couldn't, didn't have the money to get supplies, etc. So there could be some trickle down there. Now, other news in events. This is pretty big. So Cvent, which is a event management software, handles everything from registrations to hotel bookings, customer management. It has been acquired for $4.6 billion. And this is, in the last couple of days, despite the current financial situations in the bank and everything going under. So this is potentially positive news. It shows that, there is investment in events. Now, Blackstone also owns Encore, okay, which is has significant investment in Encore, which is probably the largest AV company in the world. You go into any hotel or venue, you're going to find them as a preferred or exclusive supplier. So that's pretty big news. And at the same time, during the same period, leading business events management company PRA acquired by Eagle Tree Capital. So there's big investment companies who are investing in events. So that is now they're not investing in small guys like us, but that is potentially a good sign. But we'll have to see how that goes. So now we're going to get into some of the robotics stuff that I wanted to share with you. So do you have a robot in your house right now? I mean, I have one that cleans my pool. Perhaps you have what is it called? A Roomba that vacuums your house. I want to know, if you could automate anything. Let's take a look at some of the things if anyone's putting anything in here. Okay, washing, put away dishes, shoveling the snow. Oh my God, that would be so sweet. None, I like humans. Make breakfast, yeah, or meal prep would be great. Yard work, cooking, folding laundry, that would be awesome, or just laundry in general. So there's some good ones, but yeah, keep putting your ideas in there. And okay, so let's take a look at our robotics. So I'm going to share a video with you now that is very interesting. So let's do this. 40% of your chores, 40% of housework, 28% of care work within a decade. There's the robot that can make your food. Less time doing laundry, that's good. Million jobs by 2025. That's interesting. So yeah, that's, pretty mind-blowing. I don't know if by 2025, I think that's maybe that was put out maybe 2020, so it's not totally up to date. But the impacts for like events and entertainment, like I think about this, and I try to think of like places where there's like bottlenecks and inefficiencies in events, and like the first thing that came to my mind was like the bar, right? That's always where there's a bottleneck. I'm really curious if a couple of robotic bartenders could spin off a bunch of drinks quicker than humans. But you're also seeing I've seen robots at events. Have you seen a robot at an event? So I've seen robots that go around that do it's basically a photo booth in a robot. But now with the integration of ChatGPT, I mean, I've seen people take a ChatGPT and connect it to a 3D avatar that you can train it to answer specific questions, and you can ask it questions and it'll speak, this 3D avatar. They can absolutely do that with robots. In fact, I want to show you something. Let's take a look at this. This is very interesting.
Inhuman perfection.
Okay, wait. Character. Is this kind of is this happening?
Yeah, no, that's why she has a helmet on.
Okay.
We're good. We're good. This is part of the plan.
I'll stay out of it.
Our characters are all about personality, right? So can you imagine what it's like putting on roller skates for the very first time? It's awkward, it's clumsy, slightly terrifying, but ultimately it's exhilarating. Right?
Nicely done.
This is our latest effort in making robots that we think can have an emotional connection with our guests. We are using high-performance materials and taking advantage of mechanical scaling effects, so she's dynamic and tough. But we're also using motion capture data because we want to make performances that have emotion embedded in them.
Yeah!
Yes!
All right.
Woo-wee. Wow. So this is a phase of our development, actually, this project where it's our playtime.
Yeah.
Because we're really trying to figure out what are the flaws and insecurities
Look at that.
in this character that make us really care about her.
Yeah. You can think of this as kind of like a backwards machine learning. Like we build machines and then we learn.
They literally just made you care about a robot. You hear about
Thank you for being gutsy and coming out and showcasing what you got.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
So that's really cool. I mean, so that's put out by, I guess, Disney. That robot is modeled after Judy Hopps, if you've seen Zoomtopia, I believe it's called. And what's interesting about this robot is that, as they said, it incorporates motion capture technology. So what that is somebody wears a suit, a mocap suit, and they record the movements of that and are able to translate that into robots. So that makes it a lot more human. And then once you add in the facial expressions, it's getting like, Terminator level, reality. So here's another one. Some of you may have heard of this company, Boston Dynamics, and I would say they're probably like the biggest robotics company who actually have robots out there. They're delivering things. They work for police departments. And some of this technology from Boston Dynamics is so crazy. Check this out.
I forgot my tools again.
Oh, no problem. Just call the robot. Oh, here he comes. No problem. Got to figure out a way to get up there. Okay. Go on with your bad self, robot. Oh, show off.
Such a show off.
So that's Boston Dynamics. That's like mind-blowing stuff. They've been at it for years. So it's cool and scary at the same time. But what do you think? Do you think robots are going to take over human jobs? I mean, that argument has been made for AI, but then the counter argument is made that you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone using AI. So, I wonder if the jobs robotics takes away from jobs like maybe bartending or sitting at a registration desk will be trumped by the amount of jobs robotics will create in the production and design and engineering of robots. So who knows? I'm curious to know what you think. But now it is time for the main event. I'm really excited because I've gotten to know Jan a little bit over the last little while, and I'm a fan of his, and I've watched what he's been doing during the pandemic. So I'm really was really blown away by that, and also want to talk to him a little bit about that. So Jan is a mentalist. He is a speaker. He talks about persuasion and influence. You know what? What better way to intro Jan than check out this video.
Ladies and gentlemen, please get comfortable as you embark on a journey of psychological entertainment, mind magic, illusion, and manipulation. Jan Markson grew up in the Russian circus and has performed at the Vancouver Olympic Games, Cirque of Aya, on Penn & Teller's Las Vegas TV show Fool Us, and for the top brands and companies in North America.
Wow, I look good on TV.
Put your hands together for the unbelievable Jan Markson.
What an intro. You get confetti and applause.
Thank you. Good to be here. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you doing, Jan?
Good. It's pretty wild what's happening with the robots, so it's interesting to watch those videos.
It is. Have you considered using a robot as an assistant in your show?
In my show, actually, yeah, why not? I could see that happening, especially if they could be invisible robots. That would be even better. Invisible assistant robots. That would be good.
Something for the developers to think about. This could be big.
Yeah. I'm just scared of a future where I'm performing for robots. It's just me on stage and a bunch of robots watching me.
No, I think it'll be like more like robots are serving the drinks while the humans are watching the performance. But anyways, Jan, thank you for coming on. I want to give the audience a little background about you. I always like to dig into people's backgrounds because I find it fascinating, and our history is sort of what makes us, right? So tell us a little bit. I mean, I heard in the video that you grew up in the circus, and that's not even a joke. That's like legit. You grew up in the circus. So I want to tell me a little bit about that, and how you sort of got into magic mentalism.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, look, first of all, circus is very different in different parts of the world. Traditionally in Soviet Union, if you look at China, you look at Europe, circuses there have very different type of clowns, for example. Their clowns are more, if you go to like Cirque du Soleil, it's like more like sketch comedy with costumes, as opposed to like slapstick, although you do see a little bit of slapstick, obviously, it's part of clowning. So when I joined the circus, it was actually a family from a very well-known Russian family from Ossetia, actually. The Kantemirov family. They were like acrobats. They were in Cirque du Soleil. They had many different types of parts of the family. Like, for example, they specialized in acrobatics on horses, and they would do incredible things. And so when they sort of retired from their career in Cirque du Soleil, they opened up this little circus school. Now, at the time, I was already doing gymnastics, so I joined, and they needed someone to like sort of entertain the little kids for birthday parties already. And so it was like they sort of were teaching me skills, but at the same time threw me into performing in front of kids already because I spoke English and I was able to perform for kids. And there I learned a bunch of different skills. And what really drove my interest is like magic. That always really got me excited. And then within magic, I found something called mentalism, which is like more playing with people's minds. And that's sort of where I got to where I am now.
I was going to ask you about that because, I was interested, in the events world, like there's so many different terms that people use, and people get really like up in arms about it, like event planner versus event manager versus event designer, and everybody has sort of different definitions of what that is. So I'm always like a little nervous to like use the word magic, or when I'm talking to a mentalist. Is that a thing? Like in your world, like how do people feel about that? And is there a difference? Do all mentalists do magic? Do all magicians do mentalism?
You know what? That's a good question, and everyone will give you a different answer. So I definitely have seen this division where people go, I've had mentalists tell me, like, when I call them a magician, say, hey, but you're a magician. Hey, well, I'm not a magician. I'm a mentalist. So yeah, there are certainly people who take it that seriously. I really don't see the difference between an illusionist, a magician, a mentalist. Like if you really want to break it down, an illusionist is somebody that uses contraptions on stage, cut somebody in half, right? A magician is somebody who might do card tricks or coin tricks, or might, sort of do something like this. And then a mentalist is somebody who will ask you to think of something in your mind, and they'll try to guess what you're thinking. The truth is, if you really peel back the curtain, the actual process is almost the same. The concepts and psychology that allow for you to perform it are the same. And essentially all they are is illusions, right? So I don't distinguish it. I call myself a mentalist because that's more like my performance style. That's what I like, is like the mind stuff. But I certainly use sleight of hand in some of my effects, just like a magician would. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. It basically. I'm muting myself because for some reason we're getting an echo on you when my mic's live, so that's why I did that. But what was I saying? I was saying Yeah, it's good that you clear that up, because it sounds like it's just as confusing as the event world, depending on who you ask, and language and how we refer to people nowadays is like extremely important. So I want to make sure I'm giving the correct respect to the title as possible.
You know what? I grew up performing as a clown for many years. So, people used to say, "Hey, you're a clown," and it's like a compliment to me. So it's very hard to offend me in any way. I think that, but I could see other people obviously getting sensitive around terms for sure.
Right. And okay, so I want to ask you. So you come to Canada, you're making your mark on the industry. You're doing shows. March 2020 rolls around, and the pandemic. Where were you when you heard about the pandemic, and what did you think? Did you think it was going to be, this is going to be a couple weeks, or did you have some foresight into the length of what it may be?
Yeah, I was following it for fairly early on, actually, because I was kind of paying attention to what was going on in China. And so I kind of, probably around January is when I first started speaking to some people that I would work with, and I'd say, hey, like, what do you think about this? It wasn't so much about disruption in our lives. It was more about like, hey, there's going to be a disruption in China, and this is going to affect everybody because it's going to affect supply chains and on this sort of thing. So I never thought it would be something that big. And then what happened was I've had, contracts of performing across Canada several months ahead. And then all of a sudden, this commotion started building, right? And there was a lot of unknown. And then people would start pulling out of events. And then some people would say, no, we're still, our event is in October. We're gonna be fine. And so eventually, though, like, it got to a point where every single contract was put on hold or canceled. And that was a very scary moment because, essentially, you don't know what's going to happen. And also understanding perception, I knew that even when they do open things, when will people actually feel comfortable with doing events, especially large scale events like corporate events, conferences, trade shows? And so it was a really, really, really scary moment for sure. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, Arthur.
Sorry, that's okay. That's okay. How long? I got to remember that. How long did it take you to sort of figure out that you need to figure something else out?
Yeah. So what happened was I thought, okay, this is going to last for however long, maybe 2 months, if it extreme situation, right? And so people would start reaching out to me and asking me like, hey, do you do virtual shows? And I was like, no, of course not. That makes no sense. I'm a mentalist. I like to see you. I like to, perform magic in people's hands. I like the energy. The whole point is that it's a live experience. Otherwise, like, why can't people just turn on Netflix and watch Magic for Humans? Why do you need to watch me, right? So I really kind of didn't take it seriously. And I saw other magicians starting to perform on Zoom, but I really just didn't feel like I would be good at it until we got to about June, where I was already in desperation mode. I mean, at that point, I started questioning the city and thinking maybe I should do something. But it was really when like a really big client of mine came and said, hey, are you able to do your session? It was actually a speaking session, not a show. And they said, can you do a speaking session? But of course, the speaking session also has elements of mentalism in it, right? So I said, you know what? Let me get back to you. Let me see what I can do. And for the first time, I decided to kind of change my own perspective about my own opinion about this whole thing. And I opened it up with the kind of fresh eyes and I started looking at what's possible. And to be honest with you, I was blown away because I found that there was communities of entertainers, magicians, audio, visual professionals that have come together on various platforms and started to come up with all kinds of tools and solutions and ideas. And I was mind blown. I ended up staying up probably like until 3-4 in the morning. I was like just binge watching videos, reading things, trying to figure this out. And by the morning, I basically emailed the lady and I was like, yeah, I think I can do this. And that's kind of how it started. And of course, it was like really wonky at the beginning. It was awful, but you know, you learn as you go.
So tell me about some of the technology that you eventually incorporated into your show. And you told me previously that, you know, doing virtual shows sort of allowed you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do live in a situation like where you're maybe with a smaller group. So I'd love to know more about that too.
Sure. Yes. So look, it changed. Here's what happened. I tried to do a show for just family and friends first to kind of do a run and see what it would feel like and look like. So I invited approximately 20 people to this like Zoom show. And it was all right, but it was just, it was entertaining because they're my friends and they're almost laughing with me and how awful it was, if that makes sense. But what it made me realize is that I need to change the way I think about this. I can't bring my live show into a virtual space and think I'm just going to do the same thing. So I had to think about a completely different setup. I had to think about maybe using multiple cameras, and that made me think about using OBS. And then that made me think about, I had to learn about which platforms are people using to have multiple cameras, and then like what kind of cameras. At the time, I also didn't want to invest too much because I have no shows going on, right? It's not like anybody's booking me for virtual shows at this point. Nobody even knows I have anything like this that exists, right? So it was a really scary time. And my computer was lagging. Like I did a show already. So this is the fourth studio that I've built, right? The second studio I built was a little bit an improvement already. I've already been doing some shows, but then I kind of did too much where I was trying to connect too much to this computer, and then it was like an older laptop, and I did a show for U of T Frosh Week. And this was already by September of that year, right? And it was about 400 people. And then as soon as I showed up and I started doing the show, everything just shut down. Like everything shuts down. So I panicked, and I'm like calling them and I'm saying, just give me a second. I'm restarting it. Everything restarts. I come back. I make a joke. I say, that's my first trick. I made myself disappear. Everyone kind of awkwardly laughs. And then boom, it shuts down again. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I ended up like disconnecting some of the cameras. That helped out. And I kind of simplified the show on the go. And it went well. I actually did the next year virtual show for them. And then I just did the live event in front of 1,500 people this year too. So it worked out in the end. But it made me realize, okay, I need to build a computer, like a proper desktop that's dedicated to the studio. I need to build proper, get proper cameras. I need to learn a lot about this. So it was a huge learning curve for sure. And it wasn't just about magic. Like that's what people don't realize is a lot goes into it. Now, to your point, once you do get into it, you start realizing, okay, but if I'm already going to do this differently, then the effects can be different. Or the effects can be the same, but the method can be different. Or I can start bringing things into my show that I never really did before. So for instance, in the past, you would perform for a large audience and you have your screens, like PowerPoint screens. But in smaller groups, like some team building event or something where it's maybe like 50, 60 people and it's a conference room, sometimes they don't put those screens up. With virtual, I have access to immediately going to my PowerPoint. I can play videos. I can get into the Chrome. I can use different, like you just use your QR code. You just think about the first 15 minutes of your show today, how many different media you've incorporated that you wouldn't necessarily do in a live event before. Was it possible before? Yes. But did we think about it? No. So it made us think differently, right? So
well, I want to ask you though. So now, virtual events have definitely taken a bit of a dip, right? We can all agree on that since people have come back to in person, and that may over time equal out at some point. Right. But how has that leveling up of technology helped you now post-pandemic? I know how it's helped me, and probably similar ways for you, in the sense that now, pre-pandemic, there'd be a lot of phone calls and you're trying to sell yourself. Yeah. But now with the ability to showcase what you can do in a 15-minute Zoom call, I don't know about you, but for me, it's changed the game and how I do business and how I sell myself and my services.
I 100% agree with that. 100%. So in the past, if you're a speaker and you do mentalism, but you want to talk to a group of salespeople, the event planner might not necessarily understand that concept from an email. And if you get on the phone with them, they still might not fully grasp the concept. When you can get face to face with somebody and they don't have to drive over across town to meet you, and it's not like a big interruption in their life, right? They can just make 10 minutes of time. You can immediately even perform some effects for them. You just make a human connection. You're able to really articulate your vision to this person much, much, much easier. So that I 100% agree. That's completely transformed the way, I guess, we do business today. The other thing I'll tell you is, working virtually, I had the opportunity to work with people that were not in Toronto, that were not in Canada. I've performed literally in probably like 50 different countries over the pandemic, right? Because some companies even have multinational audiences and these kind of remote teams even before the pandemic. Even you and I, Arthur, I think I met you because I reached out to you, during the pandemic, because I noticed that you were one of the few people that was doing virtual events, and I was looking to connect with other people. So now that the pandemic is sort of over, right, and we have a little bit of virtual, mostly live, but as you said, who knows what it's going to be like. But what I have noticed is that these connections that we've made during the pandemic all of a sudden opened up all these opportunities that we never had before. Like we never thought of it that way before. So it completely, I think it's almost funny how it's like the year 2020 is almost like it had to happen that way. It's what pushed us into that digital world. Like that's the real big push, and it happened on 2020, which is so, it's like a movie, right? Like you can't write anything better than this.
I know, and Y2K was such a disappointment, I should have. And okay, so now I that's great, and I'm glad that you are benefiting from all the hard work you put in, and that it's paying off. And I mean, I would imagine too that have you come across scenarios now where you're actually performing to an in-person audience and a virtual audience at the same time?
Yeah. So 100%. And those hybrid events where you perform live, but there's an audience virtually. And again, it can be amazing, but it could be awful as well, because it depends on the setup and the experience that the team has. I've been in both situations where it's amazing and I try to take advantage of it. So I'll even come up with some sort of engaging trick where it uses somebody who's virtual and then somebody who's live, right? Like I think that idea is even so amazing, so powerful. But I've also been to events where they just never really put a lot of thought. The virtual thing is just like an afterthought, like some sort of like stream that they threw together on a laptop and put on the side of the room. And in that case, I feel like it's actually counterproductive, and it ruins the experience, and it makes me look bad, and I can't control it. And then people are watching this is lame, right? And it's not my fault it's lame. So I think that it can be done, hybrid events, but you have to treat both sides with some respect. You can't just think only about the live experience and completely ignore the virtual experience, right? You have to think of how can you make them interact more, or at least how can you create unique content for the virtual, or get them in on the conversation, but you can't just have it as an afterthought.
Yeah, that's the hybrid events thing is still in progress. They're still figuring that out. Is it useful? Is it I've done a couple things that were kind of neat, but they were more like groups of events happening at the same time. So you have, an actual, 100 people here, 100 people there, 100 people there, and they're all experiencing it together. Okay. That sort of hub and spoke method, which I think is interesting. But yeah, hybrid definitely presents its challenges. So now I want to talk about the big topic, persuasion and influence, because I imagine that is a big part of what you do, and you also speak about that. So I'm wondering if you can you give me some tips on how I can be more persuasive, how I can be more influential, so that I can use some of these nuggets to increase my ability to persuade people?
No, I absolutely think so, 100%. And it's kind of funny how it all came together. So you have to think about like why, first of all, magic is so fascinating, at least for me, right? So first of all, what I like about magic is that magicians don't think that anything is impossible, right? Almost nothing is impossible, at least from a perception perspective. At least from like, maybe it's not possible to fly, but they can certainly make you feel like you just saw that person flying, right? So it's the idea of like impossible is not really a concept magicians think about. The second thing that has always fascinated me once I got into magic, and it's an interesting topic because I wish that I could just explain magic tricks to everyone, because then you would fall in love with magic the way that I love magic. But I can't, right? I have to only show you the effect side of it. I find the method side of it more fascinating than the effect side of it, because in magic, or in any type of illusion, right? Magic, mentalism, whatever you want to call it, essentially you're leveraging human patterns and limitations. That's all it is. Like, as much as we think we're all different, we have certain limitations that make us exactly the same, right? Certain patterns and tendencies and biases that will drive our behavior. And so magic just takes advantage of this for entertainment purposes. We can see this in marketing and politics all the time, right? The second thing is that imagine a mentalism effect where you can figure out that somebody thought of a yellow house, okay? Or let's do a playing card. So a person picks a playing card and then you pick the 3 of hearts. You know, they're gonna be like, yeah, I did, and it'll be over. But I've seen David Blaine perform this exact trick and people going nuts, right? So what's the difference? And I realized that the other thing that fascinates me and makes me really love this magic and anything kind of around this area is that it's not just about the trick. It's about the presentation, and specifically, the presentation has to be emotionally connected and has to resonate with the audience. Otherwise, like, it's going to be really dull. It's going to be really boring. And to be honest with you, like, it's not hard to do magic tricks. I could teach you a magic trick right now and you can perform it right away. That's not the hard part. The hard part is to understand how to make it resonate with your audience. And when it comes to persuasion and influence, so I don't know if you know this about me, Arthur, but prior to doing this full time, I actually worked in a AI software company, and I headed up marketing in this company for quite some time. And I got to shadow really, really talented people in sales and negotiation and business development. And what I've noticed is the difference between people who are really successful at persuasion and just communication in general, and those that are not, is actually the exact same concept that makes a good magician or a good parent or a good teacher. And this is that they've mastered the ability to shift perspectives. So there's a really amazing quote. It goes like this. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And it sounds obvious, right? So it's like shifting perspective, just have to think from the other person's shoes, right? Step into their shoes. The problem is we don't actually do this. We all logically understand this, but when we're in a negotiation or in a conflict, or we're just trying to sell, or whatever it is that we're trying to do, just convey a message, right? There's so much going on. There's emotions. There's all this inner chatter. We put all that aside, right? All we start doing is we just start bombarding our perspective, and we start piling up facts, trying to prove our perspective. And that's not going to change somebody's perception, because this person has deeply rooted experiences, biases, tendencies, patterns that you're not just going to change by just throwing your ideas at them. The only way you could possibly persuade somebody, in fact, I can argue that it's impossible to persuade somebody. You can only persuade yourself. So the only way you can truly persuade somebody is to shift to their perspective, acknowledge to them that you understood their perspective. And then when they can see that you are on the same page and you understand them, they let their guard down and they're much more willing to listen. And then when you do start speaking, you speak in their terms that resonates with them, and you slowly start bringing them and shifting them over to your perspective.
Sounds like empathy.
That's exactly it. It's empathy. It's exactly what it is. And it's empathy. There's an amazing hostage negotiator in FBI, Chris Voss. Have you ever heard of this man? So amazing. This guy is very interesting, wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. He had an amazing podcast with Lex Friedman just very recently. So I suggest for anybody who doesn't love reading, maybe at least listen to the podcast. But essentially, he's huge on empathy. And the way he puts it is, it's empathy without without being emotionally sympathetic necessarily, or agreeing even with this person. You're just acknowledging their perspective. You don't have to agree with their perspective. You don't have to even comment on their perspective. By simply acknowledging their perspective, there's like a magic. It's literally like magic. It's a pattern that shifts in their head, and they lower their guard down, and they're much more receptive now to listening to your opinion.
And what about influence? So that's, I mean, are they the same thing, or are they different in terms of what you do? So there's the empathy of being able to, be on the, be understanding to their position. And once I have their guard down, where does the influence sort of come into play there?
Good question. So influence, like, let's just be clear, like, we're not talking about manipulating somebody to do something bad, right? Like, in fact, like, I don't believe that you can use empathy to manipulate somebody. You can like sort of fake it maybe temporarily, but long term you can't kind of operate this way. So I think that when it comes to influence, you have to first ask the question, like, what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? And that goal needs to be articulated in a way where, again, it resonates with that person. And if, let's say, can we use an example? So let's say I want to influence you to go on a roller coaster, and you're really scared of roller coasters.
That's true. I don't like roller coasters.
You see, well, I'm a mentalist, so there you go. If I just start convincing you about like why, all the reasons why it's safe, it's not going to change your mind. You're an intelligent guy. You know that it's safe, but you're still scared of it. The reason you're scared of it is because of certain patterns in your brain. If we don't address those patterns, then we're never going to be able to get to influence you, right? So the only way to influence someone, again, is to address the blocks and be really transparent and be empathetic to them. Bring them up, talk about, ask, why do you feel this way? To understand the root of that experience, right? When it comes to something like roller coasters and fear, it's complicated, right? Like, there's people who are hypnotists and psychologists and people in cognitive behavioral therapy that can help with smoking and things like this, right? We're talking about like really deeply rooted things like fear. But if you're just trying to convince somebody to, have some sort of an LED backdrop at their event, what you need to do is understand their interests and their perspective. What are they trying to achieve? What is their end goal? And if you can then articulate to them how this LED wall is going to achieve that goal and really paint a picture in their mind, like illustrate that picture of what that story is going to look like at the end. At the end, here's how it's going to make your audience feel. At the end, here's how you're going to feel about it. At the end, you're going to get this type of feedback. And you start explaining to this person in terms of how they're going to feel in the future, right? Then all of a sudden it starts resonating with them, because it's resonating with what they're scared of, right? Of not getting in trouble, or things they want, which is to look good in front of their team and their boss or whatever it is.
Awesome. So now, why don't we put this into practice? And why don't you do something on me?
Sure.
Let's try it out. All right. We have a potential for people in the audience to also, if you're watching live, Jan will also throw it out to you. If you're watching, you can also.
So can we do this? We have a chat feature, right? Let me see if I can see that feature. It looks like I can only see my own comments.
Yeah, you won't see the audience's chat, but I can read them. I'm seeing everyone's chat.
People are willing to do this with me. Yes.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I am anyways, so they're lost if they don't.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a little card trick, and it's like a little coincidence effect. Now, I want to say this card trick, it's not some sort of visual, like there's no filters or special magic effects or video effects, I should say. This card trick would work the exact same way if we were in the same room. Okay. Now, obviously, it's impossible for me to give you the cards into your hands right now, so I'm gonna do a little bit of the work for you. Let me switch my camera here. So First of all, you realize there's 52 cards in a deck of cards. Let me move the cards a little bit this way so you can see it. I'll do it all the way from here. There we go. So lots of different options. In a moment, Arthur, I'm going to ask you to choose a card. Okay, and the way we'll do it is I'm simply going to drop the cards. You say stop whenever you want, and I want you to sort of memorize that card. Now, typically, I would get you to close, one person to close their eyes, one person to not, but we're going to do it in a slightly different way than I usually do it. So take a look at these cards. I'm just going to drop them like this. You say stop. I could show you what card you stopped at, or you could say keep going or go back or whatever you prefer, okay? As long as at the end we get whatever card you want. All right, Arthur, you ready? You just say stop when, hold on a second, it's falling off my hand. You say stop whenever you want.
Stop.
Okay. Do you want me to keep going or go back?
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay. So memorize your card.
Okay.
It's this one here. Okay.
Yeah.
Now in this case, it doesn't matter. Everybody can see it. It's the three of hearts. But typically, there's another element. If somebody has their eyes closed, you can do more. Let's do this. If I were to mix these cards up, okay? So put them into kind of a random order. Let's see how good the intuition of your audience is, how good they are. Let's get the audience to do this. I'm going to put the cards so everyone can see it like this. And I'm going to ask everybody in the audience here to just imagine that you are a mentalist. Imagine that you are capable of like having this amazing intuition. Like, for example, Arthur, have you ever had this feeling like this psychic experience almost where somebody calls you and before you even pick up the phone, you kind of already know who's calling? Have you ever had that before?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but that's called caller ID. Okay, Arthur, that's not psychic. All right. So what we're going to try to do, we're going to pretend we have the psychic ability. I want you to imagine right here, everybody in the audience, imagine that you know where his card is, which one it is. I want you to, there's 52 cards here, right? So put in a number into the chat. And which card do you think is his card, the three of hearts? Go ahead, put it into the chat. Right?
Okay, guys, so you heard
Arthur,
that.
What you're going to do in a moment is you're going to pick one of those people that you feel the strongest connection with in terms of like that number really resonates with you, okay?
Okay, we'll have to give them a second because there's about a 30-second delay. Oh, we got one here.
Delay. Okay, so
we got. So Robert says 22, and I will wait a second to see if we get any more. But I definitely get a good vibe from Robert, so he's a buddy of mine.
Okay. Well, Robert is in on it because he transferred some Bitcoin. So, but no. Let's see.
Let's go with 22. Let's go with 22.
Okay. So now. Check this out. I'm gonna move these a little bit just so we have some space because I already know we need 22. So I'm just gonna do this in the most fairest way possible. Just watch what I do here. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and here's this one right here. That's 22. Now, check this out, Arthur and Robert and everybody else. If you would have said 21, you would have gotten this card. Obviously, that's not the right choice, Arthur. That's not your card. If you would have said the very next card, for example, you've gotten 2 of clubs. So you see, if you would have picked any one of these cards, and you could have, to be fair, anybody could have said 1 to 52, any number, they could have yelled it out, right? You would have gotten one of these cards. And you can see that that's not the 3 hearts. None of these are the 3 of hearts. You could have picked any card you wanted to, Arthur. You could have changed your mind if you wanted to. Everybody on the call could have picked a different number, but they didn't. Take a look. A little bit weird, but it's the 3 of hearts.
Wow.
And so there you go. Is that a coincidence? Or is Robert and Arthur and Jan tricking everybody on the call? Who knows? We'll never find out.
I don't think I can definitely say there was no setup there. So that was definitely on the spot. So thank you, Jan, for sharing your...
Mind if I try something with everybody watching?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, this you don't need to participate in chat. You can just do this with your eyes. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Like we've all seen this before. You're looking at this image, and I promise you, this image is not a video. this is a still image. Okay. Now, what's amazing about this is that your brain cannot see that you cannot stop this with your brain. It requires a lot of attention, kind of getting really close to it and looking at one particular area. But to be honest with you, this is what shows that it's almost like we don't have a choice but to see an illusion. Illusions just happen. And it's not like, here's a great example of something that kind of shows you that even though you might be right, doesn't mean the other person is wrong. And a lot of the time when it comes to negotiation or any type of communication, you need to first acknowledge the other person's side, and then they'll be curious to hear about your side. This is just kind of a little picture that describes that. But try this out. So Arthur, do you think this is a little picture of an old lady or a young lady? Which one do you see?
I see a young lady.
You see a young lady. You don't see the old lady?
No, I see a young lady with a bonnet.
Check this out. So here's the young lady. You see the young lady here, right? That's the eyes. You got the hair, all that. But check it out. Here's now the old lady. Do you see that now?
I see that now.
Here's what's interesting. Try this with your mind right now, and everybody try this. So, if you could see the train here going into the tunnel. Let me remove myself for a second. The train is going into the tunnel. I want you to imagine now the train is coming out of the tunnel. Can you do that with your mind? Now, try.
Yes, that just happened. Literally, as you said that, now it's coming out.
Beautiful. Try going back and forth like three, 4 times. See how fast you can do it, and you'll be able to do it faster and faster. Okay. Now, the reason that I find this fascinating is because all that is really is like it's not going in or out of the tunnel. It's like 2 frames, right? The train just doing this. And but what's amazing about it is that you can actually feel that cognitive energy that's required to shift perspective, to make yourself go from young lady, old lady. Oh, I see it. You can feel that energy that's required. And that's why when I say we have to be empathetic, people go, well, that's not really a trick. What, you just want me to think about somebody else's perspective? That sounds kind of obvious. It's like, yeah, that is obvious. The problem is that it's very difficult to do because we're not programmed to do that. We're programmed to have status quo bias, confirmation bias, availability bias, right? We're programmed to kind of keep our brain energy low. We don't want to waste that energy for non-important decisions, right? Unless it's like survival. And so imagine how much energy it takes you to just shift perspective on an image with 2 frames. Now imagine if you have to be shifting perspective about something that you're very uncomfortable with or scared of, like roller coasters. And it's like much easier to be empathetic to somebody who looks like you, speaks like you, and agrees with you. It's much, much more difficult to shift perspectives and be empathetic when somebody speaks differently, has different opinions. But the truth is that's the only way you'll be able to communicate effectively, is by putting in that cognitive energy into it.
Mind blown. You're gonna get a knowledge bombs being dropped.
There we go.
Nice. I mean, that is amazing. I think that there's definitely like something in there for everyone, and it really, even just showing those slides, it really, really makes you think about perspective, right? And being empathetic. I like that one where you have the one person staring at the 6, and the other person staring at the 9. Are they wrong, right? Are they both wrong? No, they're both right, right? So it really depends on which side of the coin essentially you're on. So yeah, this has been an incredible conversation, and I'm so glad that you were able to join. So I want to thank you, Jan, for coming on. I'm going to give you another blast of confetti for you. So yeah, this is bringing to a close this episode, and I just again want to thank Jan. Jan, let people know where they can find you and where you hang out. We want it so they can stalk you, things like that, on social media.
Absolutely. I hang out at home mostly. But no, you can check out my website, janmarkson.com. Same thing on Instagram, Jan Markson, LinkedIn. And, I should really learn from you, Arthur, and start really pushing myself and creating more content, because I am inspired. It's amazing to see like the conversation we had at the beginning, and you were sitting in like some kind of like almost like in a metaverse with all those screens. You had like a completely different look, and now you've got this like, people don't understand how much is going on in the background that Arthur is doing. Not only is he like talking to me, talking about the news, plugging things together, getting chat, but all the like AV stuff behind it. It's amazing to see. So, you know, it's inspirational, and it's my pleasure to be here with you, Arthur.
Well, I greatly appreciate the kind words. That's it for this episode. Stay tuned, because next week we will be joined by Maya Kiltron, who's an incredible artist. So I can't wait to bring her on the show and talk about life as an artist in 2023, because I know a lot of you out there watching are creatives, and you know, it's been a challenging couple of years, and you know, I want to get a perspective from creatives, from artists, on where they're at now, what their plans are for the future, what they feel is coming down the pipeline, and just share knowledge. So that's it. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Arthur K, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.